Mr. President, is Vice President Vance hosting a gathering this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
Is he working on what?
Is he hosting some kind of gathering of top advisors this evening to talk about how to respond to the Epstein situation?
I don't know. I could ask you that question. I don't know of it, but I think here's the man right here.
I saw it reported today, and it's completely fake news. We're not meeting to talk about the Epstein situation, and I think the reporter who reported it needs to get better sources.
Look, the whole thing is a hoax. It's put out by the Democrats because we've had the most successful 6 months in the history of our country, and that's just a way of trying to divert attention to something that's total bullshit.
Two topics were discussed during the White House meeting dinner on Wednesday, which J.D. Vance pulled together to talk about a collective response in the Epstein affair and scandal and cover-up that's putting the administration into a tailspin. It all moved to the White House. You had the Department of Justice. You had the FBI. You had J.D. Vance, probably Stephen Miller, Susie Wiles, and other all in the room, Todd Blanche, to try to coordinate between the administration, the Department of Justice, and the FBI to get their story straight, to figure out whether they should release Ghislaine Maxwell's transcript of her interview, how they should release it, whether Todd Blanche should go on, get this, the Joe Rogan show, blowing away any last shred of dignity between the Department of Justice as being an independent entity and the White House. They're all together cooking the books. But that's not the only thing they discussed. They also discussed FBI agents and the continued purge of the FBI. And a day later, two major figures of FBI leadership, just because they ran the FBI and had senior leaders during Jan 6 and during the investigations, two devoted statesmen, two devoted civil servants, some of which have received the Medal of Valor by the FBI, ran hostage and anti-terrorism units, ran field offices for DC, ran the Jan 6 investigations. Brian Driscoll and Stephen Jensen are no longer with the FBI, and we are lesser for it, and our national security is now undermined because Donald Trump is trying to pay back anybody that touched January 6th, as if they were the problem, as if them investigating Donald Trump and the Jan 6 insurrectionist crimes were the problem. What would Donald Trump have done? Ignore all of them? Ignore 2,000 people attacking the Capitol and trying to set it fire? So that was another topic during the secret meeting. I'm going to cover it all right here. We're together on Legal AF. Together we shall overcome the Trump administration, I assure you. Hit the subscribe button. So Brian Driscoll was the acting FBI director before Kash Patel, a right-wing podcaster, became the FBI director. He got into a bit of a locked horns with Emil Bovee. Remember him? He was sort of the acting Attorney General while we were waiting around for Pam Bondi. Now he's on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, lifetime appointed judge with 3 whistleblower complaints against him. He locked horns with Brian Driscoll about Brian Driscoll turning over files related to the Jan 6th FBI agents that worked those cases because they were going to be purged, and he refused to be part of the purge, and he stood up. Stephen Jensen, who has head of the domestic terrorism unit for the FBI. He was also the head of the hostage rescue negotiations. He was supposed to be up on the stage when Jeannine Pirro, I can't even believe my mouth has to form the words, Jeannine Pirro, US Attorney for DC. When Jeannine Pirro held a press conference yesterday in which she was announcing the investigation, criminal investigation, continued investigation, and developments about those 2 Israeli embassy, that young couple that were gunned down in Washington on the way out of a museum several months ago. It was noted by the press that Steve Jensen, who they love, press loves, FBI loves, charismatic leader, should be the FBI director. That Steve Jensen was listed as being, because he was part of that investigation, up on that stage, and they noted he wasn't there. The insiders in the media noted Steve Jensen wasn't there because he was about to be fired. So they caught Jeannine Pirro. And look at her response. I'm here to talk about crime, not politics. What politics? You just fired, effectively, although the media didn't know it at the time of this press conference. You just fired Steve Jensen, dashed his 20-year career somebody that should be leading the FBI, after you just got through telling the world that you're down about 100 US attorneys who don't want to work for you, and now you're saying you don't want to play politics? Let's play the clip.
The death penalty. And separately, Steve Jensen was supposed to be up there alongside you announcing this today, but he's been fired. Do you have any explanation why?
Okay, I'm going to talk about Sarah and Yaron's parents. I spoke to them, and I told them that the process is beginning, that they will have an opportunity and a right to put their input into what decision is ultimately made. Okay, and I'm not going to talk about politics today. I'm talking about crime.
So I'm troubled, as you can tell, by a number of these developments. One, the FBI, the Department of Justice getting together with the politics. It is about the politics, Pirro, because that's what we just watched. What do you think the White House meeting is, putting the FBI and the DOJ together in a dinner? And they moved it from J.D. Vance's house, who seems to be, I want to be the problem solver for Donald Trump. They moved it from his house because the media found out about it. They figured they could sneak people in better and move them around better within the White House. Plus, if Trump wanted to jump in, he could just pop his head in, right? Because we don't have a full roster of who was in the room. We know it was Bondi. We know it was Blanche. We know it was J.D. Vance. We know it was Kash Patel. Was Bongino there? There's mixed reports about that. Stephen Miller? Likely. He's the domestic president that we don't really have with Trump. And so that group gets together. What do you think that is, Jeannine Pirro? That is politics. That's them talking about the political repercussions of the Epstein scandal and their cover-up in it, and their boss's involvement in the cover-up of the two pedophiles who used to be his best friends, Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. And the other topic is continuing to purge the Department of Justice and the FBI. I got news for this Trump administration. People of valor, character, and integrity don't want to work for you. You don't have to worry about purging. Most of them have left. The ones that have stayed believed, like Driscoll and Jensen, that they were doing America a favor, that they were patriots, that they were protecting America by working from within instead of being outside. But now they're just another couple of employees that are not given due process when they were fired. You've seen Jeannine Pirro. She didn't want to answer the questions. But our national security is undermined. Our homeland security is undermined by the firing of people like Brian Driscoll and Stephen Jensen. And I don't even understand the working theory. The working theory is if I could sit down MAGA, Trump, Vance, any of these idiots that got together for pizza in the White House the other night, and I could ask them, what would you want? Explain to me. Just if you had a magic wand, what would the FBI had done at the time if you were in charge? Because you were in charge. But if you were really in charge on Jan 6th and you won the next term, what would you have done? You just ignore them? You don't prosecute them? You don't investigate them? You just act like the 2,000 people climbing all over the Capitol, chasing legislators and staffers through the hallways to try to kill them and lighting things on fire, and a medieval pitched battle at the West Portico and Terrace and on the front steps. We just ignore that? Sure, that happened. But, I'm out here writing littering tickets. I don't understand. I just don't understand the logic, because there is no logic. The continuity of thought here. What is it? So they did their job. You may not like the results. You might not like that the Jan 6th insurrectionists, including dozens that were so violent they were kept in jail by federal judges who saw the evidence, and we didn't. But we know the evidence now, because they were so violent they couldn't even be released on their own good behavior before trial. All those people, yeah, they got prosecuted. They got investigated. That's the FBI's job, to not let our Capitol fall, to not let the White House fall. It's not supposed to be, those movies are not supposed to be documentaries. And Brian Driscoll and Steve Jensen collectively with 40 years of FBI experience, hostage negotiation teams, domestic terrorism task force, ran the Jan 6th, worked on these two. Looks like Jensen was working right up until he got fired on a high-profile case. And who they're going to be replaced with? Jeannine Pirro just said there's a brain drain. Forget draining the swamp. They're draining the brains out of the DOJ and the FBI and other departments, because people are either leaving voluntarily, getting fired, or I guess that's it. Leaving, that's it. And not being replaced, because who wants to replace them? There's nobody left in the Department of Justice beyond, like, once you do the senior leaders, the acting this, the acting that, and the deputy this, and the deputy that, there's nobody underneath. There's nobody working. There's no line prosecutor. There's no second-year lawyer. I mean, there are, but they're few and far between. They're heading for the exits. So we'll continue to follow all of the repercussions from the Wednesday meeting. I already did a hot take. It's up right now. Just hours after that Wednesday meeting in the White House, that unholy alliance between the FBI, the Department of Justice, not independent, and the White House, lawsuit by Democracy Forward to get the Epstein files under a Freedom of Information Act request from the FBI and the Department of Justice. You want to play politics? Turn over your files. And I commend that. Come on over and watch that particular hot take as well. It's up right now on Friday on here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us continue to grow this democracy. Again, together, we will overcome the Trump administration. Until my next hot take, I'm Michael Popok. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touches Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event, by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states, and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popok Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.